the training or the session, I'm going to focus on describing the template, and the later we will see how the template looks like after it is completed. There may be slight difference between the template we are going to describe and the template which is a sample template which is already filled in with all the details. Okay. So the first page here, when we talk about it, is a functional requirement document and the project name. In the if you see square bracket, that's the place where you have to replace the information. Section 6.0, you have to forget about that. This is a 6.0 is a part of the book that is we provide to the students for as a training material. So we have a different sections for the different topics, and for the FRD it is a section 6. Let me go to the next page now. This book is called the Business Analyst Training book, and it is from Anisan Technologies. Okay. Now, in terms of the document history, if you see, we will have some information. This will help you to understand the background of your document. For example, what is the current version of the document, and who is owner, and when is the last updated, and who has updated by, and who is the author, and what date it has been created, and what is who has approved and approval date. If you see the current version and the last updated, so these are the two information you will come to know how matured is the document and how many versions possibly it has gone through. For example, if the current version is 1.1, then it may relatively new, but if the current version is maybe 5.9, then it has gone through few iterations or few versions, so the document is well reviewed and approved at different stages. Okay. And the author information is important in case if you have any questions, or if there is any ambiguity about any requirement, any clarification is required, that is a time you can go back to the author and seek the clarification. This is basically when the team, different type of teams are going to use the FRD document, refer that, and if they come across any the challenges, or if they come across any issues with the requirement document, then they can contact the author. Okay. The approved by is also important to know who will basically own the document, who has approved it. Okay. And if you have any question about, for example, the author which cannot explain a particular a requirement, or he says that this is the way we have been explained by particular stakeholders and who has approved, then if you need a further clarification, probably you may want to basically talk to the stakeholder who has approved a particular document. Okay, so he may basically provide you additional details. So that's the introduction. The next part basically is a table of content, and this particular page, as we talked about, we can just insert the table of content by clicking the insert button and table of content, selecting a style of, and then inserting. That's the end of your document. You will create this part. Okay. Then we have is revision history. This is a very important part of the document. This will talk about the history of the document. A is a name, who has initiated the revision, what date it has been revised, and what are the reason for the changes, and the revision number. So this is version number, sorry. So this is the way you will come to know if a particular requirement has changed, at what stage it has changed, and in what version you need to refer. If a document has 10 different versions, so it is very tedious job to go through all those different documents, so it is better to refer a particular version. So this version document history will help you to basically get to that specific document or specific version of the document, and then it will help you to save your time basically and efforts. Okay, now I'm going to go to the next level. It talks about the introduction here. Okay, in the first part, introduction is again further bifurcated into subsections. Like for example, 1.0 is the introduction, 1.1 part of the 1.0 is purpose. So here we have to describe the purpose of the solution or the product or the application or the project, what you intend to basically develop, and whose requirements are specified in this document. This will also include the revision or the release number. It will also describe the scope of the solution that is covered by this FRD, particularly if the FRD describes only part of the solution or a component of a solution or a single subset. For example, you need if you are going to describe only the fund transfer, which is part of online banking solution, right? So in this case, you will have to, here is a the space where you need to describe what is the overall project is there, and what if this particular document is representing only one section of that whole document, the whole project, then you need to specify. This will help the readers to understand that there are additional components of the solutions, and if they need to refer some more information, they can basically find elsewhere. Okay, and the second part, that is 1.2, talks about the document convention. If you see the document convention, it will describe the standards or any typographical conventions that were followed here while writing the FRD. I'm going to talk FRD throughout the session. FRD simply means a functional requirement document. Okay, such as fonts or highlighting that has a specific significance. For example, if you want to quote something from a particular policy document or a particular the meeting or the minutes document, or so and so forth, so that you can specify in the italic, which is extracting from somewhere. That is how you can specify. Or you may want to also say state whether priorities of the high level requirements are assumed to be inherited by detailed requirement, or high level requirements are followed by the detailed requirements, like that. So the readers will know how the document is structured. Okay, next we talk about the intended audience and the reading suggestions. So you will have to describe who are the audience, and here it is mentioned here, some of the mentions such as business stakeholders, developer, project manager, marketing staff, users, testers, document writers, and so on. And please specify the roles, not the name of the readers. Okay, because the people may basically join and leave the organization at some point. Whoever is replaced by the a particular person, or then he will take over the role. So the role is important for you to mention, because those will continue. In a rare cases, the role may also be they may become redundant and they may be removed, but it's not so common. Okay, so it is easier to basically identify a person based on the role. Intended audience, we talked about the suggestions. Here it is, we can also write the describe what is the rest of this FRD contains and how it is organized. Again, organizing, basically how do you, what kind of a structure you may have. Okay, for example, fund transfer process is described before the fund transfer requirement. That could be like a diagram is described before the requirement, something like that. But if you have this kind of a structure, please ensure that you follow the structure throughout the document. You keep this as a standard and follow for the standard, and maintain this for every requirement. Next comes to the solution scope, that is 1.4. That is solutions, we have to basically specify what is a solution scope. In this case, the online banking is a scope of entire project and a solution. However, this requirement document conveys only the fund transfer section or the component. This provides a short description of the solution being specified and its purpose, including relevant benefits, objectives, goals. It also help you to relate the solution to corporate goals and business strategies. So we are basically describing the solution goal and how this goal basically solution will help the organization to achieve the organizational goals. So both have to be basically captured at this stage. If a separate vision and scope document is available, refer to that document. If you remember, in the previous session we have done the vision document, right? So vision and scope document. So you don't need to basically rewrite every time. There is no need to reinvent the wheel. So what you need to do, you just simply mention, please refer this document, or append end of this document, or you can provide the path where the document is saved, right? Like that. So that way it is, the document doesn't become a very heavy. Okay. Then comes to the references. Here please mention all the references you are possibly going to use in this document or used in the document. In this case it could be policy document, IT development standards, it could be system requirement specification, it could be use case documents, or it could be many other documentations are there, right? Or it could be the previous version of the FRD, or it could be the similar project which has been implemented, right? Yeah, something like that. Question? Just a minute. If no questions are there, then it is a next basically section of the FRD is going to be overall description. In this case, when we talk about the overall description, it is a solution perspective. What do you mean by solution perspective? It is you have to write down the context and the origin of the solution being specified in the FRD. For example, state whether the solution or the product is a follow-up member of the solution product family. If you see, this is again a repetition of what we have done earlier. So in this case, if you find such a repetitions, so you may need not repeat the details. Okay. At one place, if you are specifying, that's good enough. Okay. So this is a solutions perspective. If you see here, and at a purpose somewhere, you'll find they are basically repeated. If you have already covered, no need to cover again. Then comes to your solution features. Please list all the features which you think are important here and which will be covered as a part of the FRD. At the high level, only name of the features is good enough, because at later part you will be describing them in detail. Then comes to your user classes and characteristics. What is a user class and characteristic? Basically, you will basically identify the various user classes that you anticipate will use this solution. Okay. For example, you have seen earlier the stakeholder list we have created, and in the stakeholder list we have created the user and grouped them in particular based on their role or based on their the functions or their background, and then their authority level and other details have been captured. So, and their technical expertise, their security and privilege levels and education levels, so those information have been captured. So you can basically use that one and refer here, that is fine. Or you can basically use that information and further sort the data and put them here, or categorize them and put them here. For example, here if you see the account holders, user transferring the funds, that is basically they will be ongoing basis, they will be using the particular requirement. Bank manager approving the high volume transfer once in a day, that's the basically the functionalities. And technical support, this is ongoing basis, right? And auditors basically auditing the transfer and technical problems once in a week. So this is how these user groups will be interacting with the solution, and what they are doing it for and how often they will be doing it. So that information has been captured here. Then comes to the operating environment. You can mention what operating environment you would be using it. So here we have mentioned just for the sample purpose few of them. Okay. Then comes to your design and implementation constraint. So when you are basically working on a design and constraint, so you'll have to check whether particular solution will work in particular the browser, or some particular, whether it is compatible with particular either the browser, or it could be a particular version of a machine, right? So that way the reason is it is very difficult to support build a solution that would support all the levels of I mean the all the versions of the browser. So you can basically take the latest one and the previous one or two. That is important in case if there is any security issues with the browser or something, and if you think the latest one only has the capability to handle those security requirements, then you may want to restrict the users to use only that particular version. Okay, so this is basically what I mean is design and implementation constraint. Then comes to your user documentation. Okay, list the user documentation. What kind of a documentation? Oops, sorry, it's moving. Okay, what kind of a user documents we would like to create for along with this FRD? User documents could be user manuals, online help document, or tutorials, or that will be delivered along with the solution. Identify any known user document delivery formats or standards. Okay, so those are the things what you would be considering. The solution comes with the help menu, and with will help customer to navigate the solution effectively. Okay, so this is basically what we would be talking about. And next comes to your assumption and dependencies. Please list all the assumptions you are will be using it for the overall FRD or overall solution, because individual assumption and dependencies we for the requirement, individual requirement, we'll be capturing them in the individual requirement details. So here what we are talking about for the entire solution. Okay, and then comes to your system features. You have to mention what are the features are there. For example, if it is a product, then you could write down what kind of the features are there. For example, if it is online fund transfer, then you are talking about there are different types of the what we call the activity the features are there. For example, fund transfer, and then you have the what we call the fund transfer, bill payment, account statement, profile management, and so on and so forth. Okay, okay. Now let me go to the next level. Then you may also want to capture the details, like for example, if there is any prioritization you have done in terms of the requirement, so that you can basically bring it here and provide the details. For example, we have done a prioritization process, and we have created a prioritization matrix for the or you could also we have create you can also use the requirement catalog, which has the requirement description and other attributes along with the priority as one of the attributes. So that also details can be captured and provided here. That is fine. Okay, and you can also write down the stimulus and the response request. So this will basically talk about the any dialogue elements associated with the use cases. Okay, and this will also talk about any list the sequence of the user actions and the system responses. This is simply nothing but a use cases, the list of the use cases which we will be creating, that you can provide, or the simultaneously, if you don't want to provide here, you can mention the particular use case number in the requirement itself. Okay, if a particular requirement has a use case associated with it, so that number can be captured and put it there. Okay, then comes to the user stimulus or the action. That's like for example, fund transfer. What happened? The response is successful. So what do you mean by successful? Then in terms of the successful, the user transfer ID is created, accounts are updated. If it is fund is transferred, then account will be deducted, and then the information will be sent to the customer. Okay, so that's the basically response after successful. Okay, and then we have is a failure. In terms of the failure, you will have is a response of the failure, what kind of why it is failure. Okay, and then when you say it is a failure, then you have to provide a number, the mention the reason for the failure. There could be, you can categorize the different reasons. Okay, um, um, and next is basically functional requirements. Okay, so in the functional requirement, I would basically ensure that you have, these are the verification criterias or the parameters mentioned. Each requirement is concise, complete, unambiguous, verifiable, and necessary. So this is the placeholder. So I'm not going to describe here. Let us go to the next level. So these are the basically a requirement we have captured in a structured manner. Let me explain that. Unfortunately, we have used a different example here, but this is will be easier for you to understand the example. Okay, just give me 1 second. We'll just start with that. If you see that example what we have mentioned here, the items and the description. The items is nothing but what we call, you may call it as some of the attributes are there and some of the requirement related details are there. Okay, now I would look into the other part. Here it is. Requirement is a book a ticket. This is the travel portal, and a description is customer should be able to book a ticket online using his or her credit card, debit card, or PayPal account. Right, that is the way. And then we have is a last updated. What is, when is it that last updated? So we have mentioned a particular date. Okay, unfortunately numbers are wrong here, so I'm just going to, give me 1 second. Because the document has gone through. Now this is a way you can find out whether the document has been verified. In case if it is verified, this information, this part has to be captured, you know. So this is a very classic example of the poor documentation. Of course only the numbers are not there, but however these things will be very common. Like, let me just first get the numbers correct. Okay, now, okay, okay, now let me just start here. The here we talked about the description, then last updated a date you can mention, and please keep the date format in the uniform way. Okay, and so that the readers will not be confused. Okay, and then you have is basically precondition. What is a precondition? That is, you may have a TBDs mentioned. Okay, but customers must be on the website or something. It just mentioned precondition. You may have many other preconditions actually. Okay, or customer is we have not specifically mentioned logged in, because nowadays you can actually book a ticket using the guest the account, right? Creating a guest account, no need to create, because a lot of people don't want to create those the okay the accounts everywhere. Then you have is basically post condition. Means after completion what happens, the ticket details are displayed with a valid confirmation number. The details are updated at the relevant nodes. Please provide the details. That's for example, if it is at the airline nodes or some many other places, so the information is gone, right? In the case of failure descriptions are displayed in case there is a failure. Okay, in terms of the success criteria, next point here, um, the ticket booking and the confirmation number is provided along with data transferred to a relevant stakeholders, that is airline system and other places. Okay, and that's the basically what we talk about it. Then we have is second one is basically, I would say, the assumption. We have mentioned the user has a computer, internet, and online payment option. Nowadays everybody assume that they have a computer, internet. I think that it should be okay, but still you have to mention that so that they are able to. Okay, so question. If no question, then I'll go to the next level. That's a constraint. The all the server that is a travel portal, payment gateway, airline gateway are working, then only then you can book the ticket. Okay, now remember, this constraint is basically if there is one of the constraint is not full, not completed, then you won't be able to basically um, complete the particular transaction or book the ticket. Question. And here the process we have mentioned here, if you see, this part is basic flow. That is, first is that select one way or round trip or multi-city. Second is the user will select or enter from and to city. If it is one way is selected, the return calendar will be disabled. And a third step will be top destination or the city names are listed in the drop down menu, Other cities are listed alphabetically. For example, if you are booking a ticket in India, you may find Bombay, Delhi, Calcutta, they are listed, and then remaining cities are alphabetically listed, right? So that is also one way. And then you can, or the option is that system will help the users to autofill the details, right? Then comes to the fourth is select the departure date and return date through a calendar only. So this is very important so that the users don't make the mistake of writing the dates. Okay, and then the customer select one way, then disable the return date calendar. So these are the small things are the part of the business rules we have already captured here. Okay, then comes to your second one. Next one is basically select the number of passengers, provide this in the three category options, allow the customer to use incremental option for all three categories. For example, adult above 11, child 2 to 11, infant 0 to 2. So if they have to, if there are two adults, then you can just simply help them to use the incremental, right? Add one like that. Okay. Question. Okay, then you have is a system will select the class from economy, premier economy, business, and first class, etc., right? Which you can, whatever you have. Then system will display all available flights on that day. They are listed at the lowest price first. Now again, this is again option you may have provide. Here we have just given one option, but if you think you want to give a different option, for example, number of what we call a number of halts, or or direct journey like that. So you, based on that, you can provide this. Now it comes to the basically second level, I would say. There are the customers will select a flight using radio button option. The reason is so that they don't select the multiple flights at one time. So this is ensure that you have only one what we call one ticket only you will be having. Okay, so next one I'm talking about is the customer will select a confirmation and proceed to the payment. Okay, before that he will also provide the passenger details, that are name and other details, and then after confirmation proceed to the system will take to the next page and ask for the payment, right? Payment on the third party payment gateway, for example bill desk in India, right? Or it could be some other thing, right? The tickets is booked once the third party payment gateway sends the payment confirmation details to the system. The airline system generates and send a ticket and a PNR number, and the internal system generates the same and send the ticket confirmation email to the customer, right? So this is what how the system will work. I mean, what happens is that data are sent, but when customer receives, here the data is structured in a systematic, a proper email or the email template, and that is what you see as a ticket. Okay. An alternate flow, book a ticket via phone booking options using a basic flow. Exception, failure like a payment issue is there, or server connectivity issue is there, or user abort the process in the middle of the way. So these could be various options. We have just captured few, there could be more. Business rule, current date onwards till next 6 month tickets can be booked, remaining dates are not available, something like that. So this is a business rule specific to this particular requirement. So this is where we have captured. What model we have created, model or design, it is a process diagram. Then comes to your priority. What is a priority? It is a high, because if you are looking at the travel portal, the ticket booking is the highest priority and main revenue generating component or the feature of the solution, right? And the status is approved here, that is what it is mentioned. And there are few more items are there. The comments, if there are any comments from anyone, you can add here. If you are using a tool, then tool will have option to basically capture the comments from other stakeholders, and again it also allows the stakeholders and the users to have a discussion about a particular requirement. Okay. And who is the author? Maybe it is operation manager, I just specified here. Owner, operation head, and the use case ID. We have mentioned here use case ID, we have not mentioned the use case itself. Okay, so that is a 3, 4, 5, 6, that's use case ID. The input data, it is basically what we are giving the input. It is one way or round trip through the radio button. To and from city names, that's we are inputting. Then dates, we are selecting a date through the calendar. Business economy class, that's again you make use it as a the radio button. Then you will have is a next is a what we call is a customer details. Select a particular flight and the customer details, payment confirmation. These are the inputs what been provided to the system. What is output? There may be more, but we have just captured few. Output data should be confirmation number, customer name, ticket details, and so on. Now we got talk about next is another part. If you see, if you see next part is basically input data. What kind of a data we input and what kind of a data it is basically captured. Actually it is only input data is captured, it's supposed to be both input and output. If you see here, trip type, one way or round trip, it is a radio button. Data type on and off, sample yes or no. And in the second is a date functionality using calendar, auto input box, and date is a DDMMYYYY. Okay, and sample data 19 what we call June 2016. Then you have a city selection, from or to city, list top 6 cities on the top and other top destination, actually top 6 top destinations, and other cities are listed alphabetically. Input box, that is autofill the facilities, that is Varcar 16 and example Mumbai. Okay, so this is how you can have input data. Actually you are not inputting, there is a cities are already pre-listed and then you are just selecting them. So the second requirement we have taken, that is actually sub requirement, or maybe a requirement that is dependent on the previous requirement, and the sub requirement here it is. If you see here, the requirement is seat selection. Description, allow the customer to select the seat after the ticket confirmation. Dependency is basically the ticket booking and PNR. So if you don't have ticket booking or the PNR, so you can't basically book the seat in the flight. Precondition, customer must have a PNR number. Post condition, selected seat must be blocked, so it should not be available for others to select again. Then comes to your success criteria, seat is selected and blocked and disabled. Okay, and then it is you have is exception, if the seat is not selected, call the customer care. Then input data, PNR number and the seat number, because you usually get this aircraft picture and then from there you can select it, right, like that. Then comes to your Then comes to your hold on. Input the output data, right? The output data, selected seat is blocked or allotted, so it is not available for others to book it again. Data format, yes or no, that's a boolean. And a business rule, once the seat is blocked, it is not available for another customer. And second rule, if the ticket is cancelled, that seat is automatically unblocked for others to use it, right? Like that. Assumption, real-time updation, so that there is no duplicate, the booking is done. Constraint, server availability. Model, process diagram. Priority, it should be a medium priority. Status, under construction. Comment, XYZ. Okay, so this is what we have created. Now here the business rules for the date selection we have mentioned. Previous date must be disabled with the gray color, means they should not, anybody should not book the ticket by mistake for yesterday's date or something like that. Ticket must be booked with the current time plus 4 hours onwards. This is considering the person to reach to the airport, or if he's already in the airport, maybe to go through the security area and all, some time, and then again some time to basically reflect in the system. Okay. Alright, then we have is the next we talk about is system. The tickets will be shown up to 6 months, so beyond that you cannot book the ticket. Okay, yeah. So this is what you have. Question? Then you have is basically user interface. Thank you. The system related requirements are there. I will explain them in like a 10 minutes, so we will have these all in one place. So all these are the like a 2 page. Yeah. You can create a system related requirement, that's an external interface requirement, that is a user interface. So in this case, user interface basically it will describe the logical characteristic of each interfaces between the software solution product and the users. This may include a sample screen, images, or any GUI standards, or a product family style guides that are to be followed. Screen layout constraint, standard buttons, functions, like for example help or something, okay, that will appear on every screen. Keyboard shortcuts like Control V, Control C, like that. Error messages to display standards, so if there is any error, what kind of message it should have depending on the error type, right, and so on. Define the software components for which the user interface is needed. For example, if you are doing the ticket booking or hotel booking or something, in terms of the banking solution, if it is a fund transfer, or if it is account statement, like that. Okay, so that is based on that the user interface requirements will be captured. Now in terms of the hardware requirement, you have to basically provide the details about, describe the logical and physical characteristic of each interfaces between the software product and the hardware component of the system. For example, your software may be connected to the different types of devices, like it is connected with the printer or fax machine or scanner or something. So then you should basically able to capture the nature of the data and the control interaction between the software and the hardware. Okay, so this is again equally important. Then you have is the software interfaces. What do you mean by software interfaces? You can basically, if your software or the solution is going to connect with other solutions like a database, operating systems, tools, libraries, integrated commercial components, and other systems also, right? So like that. So you need to basically capture the interface details. How do you basically interact with each system, that is the data type or something. Identify the data items or the messages coming into the system and going out, and also describe the purpose of each of those messages, and also describe the services needed and the nature of the communication is required. So you will have to capture the data format and all those things, how often it will be there, and like that. And are there any conditions, right? Those has to be captured. Refer to the document that describes a detailed application programming interface protocol, and you will have those details there. Identify the data which will be shared across the software components. For example, user ID, right? That could be across the software, like that. So that is a part of your master data. If the data sharing mechanism must be implemented in a specific way, for example, use of the global data area in a multitasking operating system or something, specify those details here. Okay. Just let me tell you, most of the places they have a centralized database for the customers or the users. Okay, so that becomes easier for everyone to basically. Now I'm going to talk to the next part is communication interface. You definitely need a communication interface details. That's basically communication interface details in terms of how the information will be communicated. For example, if it is a web browser, then that is HTTP, HTTPS details, or if it is FTP. So those are the things. That will also include the functions required by the software solution or the product. That includes email, web browser, network server communication protocol, electronic forms, and so on. Okay. Then you have is other non-functional requirement. Those are your performance requirement, safety requirements, security requirements. In terms of the performance, you will have to basically specify what is how the performance is expected, and those can details. For example, the performance requirement for the product under various circumstances. The like peak, what is a peak level and what is normal and what is worst case scenarios, right? And state them here and explain the rationale why we need like that. Okay, and to help develop understand the intent and make it suitable design choices. This is important so that based on that your architectural design will be done. Okay, now you will have another part is the safety requirement, what kind of a safeties are required, so that the specify the requirement that are concerned with the possible loss, damage, or the harm that could result from the use of the software solution or the product. Define any safeguard or the action must be taken, for example firewall or something like that, right? And refer any external policies or regulation that state safety issues and affect the product design or use. In this case, you have to basically, for example, if it is a bank, then bank, if there is any regulatory body, they have specified what are the requirements are there, and those requirements you may have to basically capture. Okay, then you may have another part I want to tell you. Next is a security requirement. Check with that what are the security requirements. You may have additional security requirements, that is, for example, specify any requirements regarding security and privacy of the issues surrounding to the use of the product or solution. Okay, for example, if you create a healthcare system, so that ensure that this healthcare system is in line with the HIPAA law, and you safeguard the customers related data. The customer here in this case is a patient data, so that is basically requirement what is expected for you to capture. Okay, now I'm going to basically talk about next is software quality attributes. Then you will have to basically describe other quality attributes that you may that may be required for the solution, and that is a part of the joint discussion. And in this case, those will be the attributes could be in terms of the adaptability, availability, correctness, completeness, flexibility, inoperability, maintainability, portability, reliability, reusability, robustness, testability, and usability. Some of the words, let me explain you here. You may find it is a why do you write down the correctness and completeness. At this stage, the correctness and completeness, you're talking about the entire solution. If user is accessing online banking solution, so the information has to be uniform every time they access, okay, data. It should not be a jargon or incomplete or some errors, right? So information, the website should download correctly and completely and with all complete features and functionalities. Otherwise people will lose the trust of that particular. Okay, now we're talking about next is Interoperability means if you have no, the solution you have built, it should be, you should be able to install on different computers or different types of machines. Okay, so that's your interoperability. Now again, another which I would like to talk about it basically, the other requirements. You may have many other requirements for that is not covered in the FRD. Those you may want to add here as well. Okay, now I'm going to basically talk about the appendix and the glossary. You may use the appendix and glossary if you, some information is like a centralized glossary is there, and why the centralized glossary you mentioned, check with that, and how that centralized glossary is basically referred to every the artifacts you will create, and that will be basically ongoing basis, you will have to update it. Okay, now the next part I'm going to talk about the, you may have the glossary 1 and glossary 2 and other information, and you may have some models also. You can also have some issue list if those are pending during the discussion, that also can be brought right here, so anyone when is reading the document, they know some of the requirements are still under discussion. Okay, analysis models, you may have appendix like for example data flow diagram, class diagram, state transition diagram, or the entity relationship diagram or something. So whatever the models you may create, that you can put it as an appendix or as a part of the document. So this is how you will basically write your FRD function, the functional requirement document. Okay, now I'm going to go to the next level. Before I go, I want to check with you any questions you have. Yes, no? Okay. Now let me go to the next one. I'll show you the sample, the requirement document for FRD. Let me just, I hope this is the same one. Yeah, this one is the one. So you will see that earlier it was we described, and here you see how it may look like. Okay, of course in the real life there will be many other changes are there. This is just a sample representation of one of the FRD, right? And here we have mentioned taken example as an online banking solution. We keep this example consistently throughout the training, so that you see that example from different perspective, from the business need perspective, from the solution scope perspective, from the business requirement perspective, from functional requirement document perspective, from testability matrix, from the use case perspective, from data modeling perspective, so that your understanding about the solution and the solution requirements improves drastically. Okay, so one example we are keeping. So here if you see, we have clubbed all of them together. You can take them in a separate pages also. Document information we have provided, current version, and if you see all those informations have been added here. Okay, and the owner and author and approved by. Okay, CTO we have mentioned here, lead business analyst, project manager. Revision history, since it is a version number 1, can't expect much of the revision here. But if it is a matured document, you may expect few lines in the revision history. Okay, and this is a document approval history. Here in the first table we have captured only the latest approval, but in case if you want to check what is the history of the approvals, you can create this additional table and fill it out. Okay, and next, this is a table of content we have created. Okay, we have just, since this is a part of the book, we did not take the page numbers because that will confuse. So we have just listed the high level, the component of the document, right? Introduction, reference, methodologies. Okay, so this is quite intensive, you see here. Let me go to the next level, and these are all the table of components are there. Okay, you see here all of them are captured here in detail. Now in this case, if you see, the purpose is mentioned here about online banking solution for the global bank. Okay, then here it is document convention is mentioned, the online banking facility by GBL, the BRD document version 1.3 is considered as a base for the preparation. So this document is based on the BRD. Okay, like that. So anyone has any queries, they can basically refer the original document. the user problem and the background. So this is a background which is consistently been mentioned in all the documents, including the business need document, solution scope document, and BRD, and here also. Okay, so this is not going to change. And solution scope, again, of course, it is mentioned here what are the scopes are here. If you see, they are in detail, they have mentioned here. At present, the customers are using, there's a little background about the scope actually, but actual scope is here. The login facility for to the existing as well as new customers, and facilities to set and change password, and set the secret question and the password policies, and these are the scope. This is a fund transfer intrabank and interbank, and what is a way you can do it outside bank, and view the account summary and download your statement. So this is, if you see here, it is mentioned the scope for the first phase development. Okay, so there are other phases are there, and requirement, you might have other additional requirement, right? So that, in this case, this part has been captured. What is excluded in the scope? Now here we have mentioned request for the check. These are the following functionalities will be developed in the phase 2, and they have been excluded from the scope. Actually, you may have additional requirements. Now, technically these are also part of the scope because they will be eventually developed in the phase 2, but you may add some additional requirement which we have discussed, but we are not adding at this stage. Okay, but here we have just put in the phase 2 requirements, such as request for the checkbook, request for the demand draft, stop payment check, email registration, nominee registration. Okay, so this is part of your customer service request. Okay, so this will be handled in the phase 2. What are the some sample references we have mentioned, like for example meeting with the MD and dates is mentioned. And then second, we have talked about the workshop and the operations, and with the operations and the system team dated so and so. Then third is a policy dates. Okay, and CB guidelines, central banking guideline are the circulars with respect to online banking and electronic payment services. This comes from your the central bank, whichever, or federal bank you may have, which is basically a controlling and monitoring authority for the banking industry in particular country. For example, RBI is in India, right, like that. Then you will have, if you see, next you are talking about business requirement document, and those have been mentioned. Question? No, this is pretty simple actually. That's why I'm taking both. And methodology, you can use what methodology you would like to use. Here, if it is saying, it is mentioned as the agile. The overall solution description, the solution overview diagram, it is not mentioned here, and the solution perspective is mentioned in detail. Okay, so the little bit of a background, and then it is mentioned as a the solution features. If you see, the features are next page. This is a solution overview. It talks about basically the how the customer is interacting with the branch, and also can interact with the online. So they have two options to do the banking, right? And but both the systems are basically connected to the core banking solution. So whether it is your staff in the bank or the online solution, both are basically connected to the core banking solution. And the back office people who provide the customer service, they can also use the same on the system to provide the services. SMS service is basically for generating one-time password to validate a particular transaction. So that's your SMS services. Then you have RBI is a monitoring body. They are basically receiving the information, and they may send a query. Again, they may get the response. That's why it is two-way. Okay, so that's a solution overview here. And on the online banking module here, that's here we're talking about solution perspective in a different way. That is the functionality wise it is, or feature wise it is mentioned. One is a login feature, then transact means fund transfer, and account view is mentioned here. There are different views you want to basically have. Is account summary and statement of transactions, right? So Then you have a request, order book, stop payment, email notification, nominations, and so on. But if you see, the request will be handled in the second phase. So, but still it is mentioned because it is still part of the scope that I was mentioning earlier. Okay. Then comes to your type of users. These are the users what we have identified, and the user details and the functionality they may use or features they may use. For example, customer has a bank account and access to the online banking solution, so that's the detail. He or she login, transaction, account, view, and request. In terms of the bank or the bank front office, they may use a front office staff view the customer detail. They may, that much only they will see. Help desk may view the customer's online transaction details and provide the support. In terms of the management, if you see, senior staff or the GBS will generate they may want to generate the report. Okay. Administrator will have user managers and the reports and all those things. So this is a various types of basically users and their possible use interaction with the solution. Then we have listed is the operating environment. If you see the operating environment here, it is mentioned in much detail compared to the previous sample. Okay, the document. In this case, if you see, it is mentioned all of those, and again the details. Like for example, operating system Windows 2010 server and above version, and Internet Explorer 8.8 and Google Chrome 34.40 and above, and minimum internet speed. Okay, and operating environment for the bank, there are various operating environments we have mentioned here. Okay, and again if you see the encryption also, it is provided here for the secure transaction. Then if it is a design and implementation constraint, if you see, they have mentioned here design in terms of the internet speed, of the availability of the internet is necessary. Customer session time is kept as 15 minutes. If the customer is inactive, then system will automatically log him or her off, right, like that. So these are the design and implementation constraint. Then you may have a user manual listed here, the user guide for the customers, troubleshooting for the customer, user guide, and the bank users. Then here if you see, there are the requirements, exactly what we saw earlier, about the ticket booking. So here it is a login. I'm just going to go to the user registration, right? This is a user registration. The requirement ID, requirements, user, and a description, dependency, success criteria, okay, and exceptions, and input data, output data, and data format. So this is how we have structured the particular requirement. And here it's a business rule for individual requirement, assumption, constraint, and constraint. Okay. So if you see here, all the requirements are listed in a similar way. So we have maintained the structure for same structure for all the requirement. Okay. Okay, so this is how the requirements are basically listed here. If you want to see here one example, I'll just take it. Fund transfer interbank. Okay, and the requirement ID FR005, requirement fund transfer interbank. Description is option of using various modes of fund transfer should be available to transfer the funds, that is NEFT, RTGS, and IMPS. In case if you are watching, if you are not Indian, you will have difficulty to understand. These are the type of transfers available for Indians in India, and those are depend on the fund and size of the fund, and again depend other criterias. But if you are outside, these options may not be necessary. Okay, outside India, those options are not there. A dependency, online access of the banking portal. Beneficiary account should be registered. So if you don't have a beneficiary, then you may have to register that. Okay, and what are the basically success criteria? Funds should be debited and transferred to the beneficiary account by generating response files, right, that way. Input data, select beneficiary, amount, select the transfer date, confirmation, security code. Output data, amount should be debited from the customer's account. CB file, that is the core banking file for the transfer, should be generated. Email or the SMS alert should be sent to the customer after transaction. In terms of the data format, you can check, select the beneficiary, that is you can use the drop down menu. and integrate, and transfer date you can mention, transfer confirmation. Okay, select, confirm, cancel, like that. Security code validation, you will get some kind of these security code through your text messages, that is a 6-digit code, so that's again part of your input, right? Now business rule is mentioned here. Beneficiary account should be should already be registered. Business timings of the bank and this core banking will be applicable. In case if you are doing transfer after the business office, then probably you may have to what we call you may have to inform the customer that the transfer will be done only when the next business hours, like that. Okay. Question. Now I would talk about the next part. I believe no questions, so let's basically talk about the next part. The next part talks about the assumption. So you will have to write some of the assumptions. Here we have mentioned pay bank IFC code is already covered under online transfer. That's assumption, means bank is already active and then received, so it is not a new bank. Okay. Then you may have is a constraint, so you may want to write down what are the different constraints. Here we have mentioned the SMS, that is a text message, must be less than 120 character, otherwise it will become a two messages, and then it will increase the cost will be double. Okay, so that's one reason we mentioned. Now this is one example we have. Now they're all, if you can go through these the requirements. Unfortunately they are not well structured because the document keep changing actually. Okay, here we have created a context diagram one to basically define the scope. Like if you see, only features are mentioned, like for example customers interacting with the online banking solution, and then in online banking solution in terms is basically connecting with the core banking solution. Online banking solution also interacting with the RBI, that is a federal bank, for sending the fund transfer file and settling the transactions. Customer does the login, customer does the transaction or the fund transfer, customer views a basically statement, and online banking will send the response for all of this. That is how it maintains. Okay. And then we have created a data flow diagram here. If you see, it's a little bit I'm trying to basically increase and see if it is possible to see. Yes, here it is. How the data is basically flowing. If you see here, a customer using the online banking facilities interface, login, and while login is authenticating the users, this one is connecting to the data store, right? He is also registering the benefit. After login he will have various things to do, right? Register the beneficiary, then he can do the fund transfer. While the fund transfer, he is also validating the beneficiary is registered, and that is connecting back to the data store, right? Then he may do the select the transfer and submit and confirm the request, right? And that request is again connecting back to the data store, like that. And if you see, there is a core banking system also is connected to the particular data store, and for various purposes. One is execute interbank transfer so that they can settle the account, and then create interbank transfer request, that is the RTGS and EFT files, and they can load the files to the RBI the server and load the response from the RBI server. So either it is sending and receiving, right? And this is a central bank external interface. Okay, so this is basically Then there is a data modeling. This is a very basic one. It's not very fancy, but it's easier for you to understand. If you see in this case, the data modeling what we have created is very simple. Here is the account number, account, and then if you see primary key, account number, this is a customer table, account type, name, email ID, mobile phone, and all etc. details, attributes of the customer, right? And the second entity is a user master, that is a user ID, and then that is a primary key will be user ID, so that customer can access the online banking solution. And in the user, the master, you have a password, last password change date, user type, session status, and account number. All of them are associated. If you see account number, this one is a foreign key, that is how it is connected with this one. And this, the second is a transaction table, primary key is a transaction ID, then it is associated with the account number, beneficiary account, that is also account number, dates, amount, remark, and RBI reference, beneficiary account, and IFSC code. So these are the details you will capture in the after the transaction is done. Okay, and the identified by unique transaction ID. And then if you see, they are connected with the beneficiary table, because beneficiary will also get updated, right? So that's a beneficiary, and primary key, beneficiary, whatever the number or ID, whatever you want to give. And other attributes are name, bank account, bank name, IFSC code, and transaction ID. So every transaction ID is again associated with the beneficiary ID. If you see this beneficiary, when you add a new beneficiary, these are all the details you basically add in order to create a beneficiary. So those all the details becomes a table, right? And if you see, these are nothing but attributes. An attribute is nothing but a column name. Under that you will find the records are created, right? For example, if it is a primary key, the beneficiary ID 001, name could be XYZ, a bank account number should be something, the maybe 10 or 12 digit numbers, and the bank name maybe Bank of America, like IFSC code, whatever the code is. Basically IFSC code is basically bank code within India, but outside then they have a particular bank code. For within each country has a different bank code. Again, remember that when you are talking about every country, every bank will have different codes. If you have if you want to have the foreign remittance, then every bank will have a single what we call foreign remittance ID. So SBI has one branch in the town side in Mumbai, that is a fort, and they receive all the external remittance and then they further distribute at this. Okay, so that is how, that's the basically code you will have. But if you are doing domestic transfer, then you will have to use the domestic the bank code number. Okay, then it is a charges. If you remember, the after you do the transaction, every transaction cost money to the customer accept it and then transfer the money. So the charges, you will have to keep a record of that, so you can have a charge ID or something. For, I think by mistake that there is no ID mentioned primary key, so you can have for example a charge ID or something. So that could be your transaction ID plus the account number, something. You can create a uh, the composite key, that's a combination of two primary keys, that's a customer ID and transaction ID. So that is how the charges can be reflected. Then you can write down what rate you have charged, what is actual amount you charged, what is the service tax, other tax, and total is there. Okay, so that is how you can get. So this is the way you can see the complete the database related requirements in one slide. Okay, so and this is how you know how the database is structured. Okay, so this is what we can call. And data dictionary next is basically talk about data of data. If you see here, customer data, so all the tables what we have seen here, the details are mentioned here. Okay, like if you see the customer table, the attribute names, right, and the type, what is a character or numeric, right, and what is a size, and then what is a description, right. So this is important for you to mention, because in the table they may be mentioned in a different way. For example, customer name should be like, it could be F underscore name, that is a first name, L underscore name, that could be last name, DOB means date of birth, So that's your attribute in that particular table, but that attribute, how do you explain to the business team? So this could be the additional. So you can add one more column saying that table the attribute or column attributes, and then here is a business name, and then data type is, and sample data can be here. And let me see whether they have sample data. No, there is no. So you can add a sample data. So this could be called as a data dictionary. So like this, if you see customer table, user master, transaction table, all the information is mentioned. So the database person will refer this and build a database. Okay, so this is how you can help. So many places the database the experts actually build this data dictionary, data mapping, data modeling, and all those things, but at some places business analyst may have to do it. So this is how you may have to worry about it. Okay, you may have to understand and prepare your artifacts. Now here, this is the next part. It is basically is a non-functional requirement. In this case, if you see, it is mentioned as a interface requirement. What are the interfaces are there? That is operating system, Internet Explorer, minimum the internet speed. This is your non-functional requirement. So that the customer needs this much in order to do the online banking transaction, right? And some of the prototypes we have mentioned, like for example, login, right? How they look like, okay? Login. And then another password reset. This is how the screen may look like. So based on this is a prototype. Based on that, the developer will prepare. Okay, fund transfer. So this is the